This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, School Success Makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater, and I'm joined by a new friend, Cristin Beene, who is the founder and current executive director of Central Christian Academy. And they're doing some super cool things. She's also been doing a lot of super cool things, and she's going to teach us super cool things today, guys. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk a lot about grant writing, which we have not yet had a guest to come on to talk specifically about that. And I've really enjoyed these episodes where we dive into a specific subject to learn something that you guys can take back to your school and make it better than it is right now. And I bet you're probably not a grant writing expert. So let's dive into maybe a little bit of that today on today's episode. So we're going to do just that. But before we do that, I always want to pass it off to our guests to introduce themselves. So Cristin, welcome to the podcast today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It is going to be a blast. So here's what I'd like you to do. Give us a little bit of background on yourself. But before we do that, I always start with the same question. And it's if I was to come visit specifically where you are, which of course I'm spacing the city and state now of where you are. But if I was to visit specifically where you are, what would you say, Mitchell? You got to do this and eat this to experience your hometown.
Well, I'm from Arkansas, and we are the natural state in the South. So some good old Southern cooking is what I would recommend, my personal favorite. And I also, my hobby is getting outdoors, seeing just, we have some really beautiful places to hike and get outdoors, and really beautiful place to live.
Love it. All right, I'll do it. I've never been to Arkansas before, but I do want to go there. I've heard I think it's the northwest corner is beautiful, like the Fayetteville area is the part I've heard the most about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Springs and different things, I guess, are up there.
Hot
or something.
springs, Hot Springs, Eureka Springs, especially this time of year when the leaves are falling. It's just gorgeous.
One day. All right, I'll make it up there. So, all right, perfect. Well, give us a little bit of background on you and how you got to where you are today before we jump into the grant writing subject of today's episode.
Okay, so the founder and early childhood director of Central Christian Academy, started officially my career, I'm going to say without too bad dating myself, in 2000. So I began as a licensed in-home childcare provider. I did that for 5 years, and then I switched over. I was the early childhood director for a mega church. Then I had the opportunity to open my very own first school. We did a complete remodel of that school where I bought existing clientele, but I opened my own brand for the school. And that's kind of what started me in kind of the educational entrepreneurship, kind of gave me that, just that really fueled my passion. After that, I just began kind of opening additional schools and locations. I have franchised, I've opened modular buildings, I've built ground up construction, I've sold schools, I've leased some buildings. So I've done a little bit of everything, and definitely is my life purpose.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like we could jump into like 10 different subjects and dive into a whole bunch of things, like how to sell a school, how to start a school, how to all these different things. So I love that God's used you for that, to like just dive in and learn all these different things that you can then, of course, teach other people and pour into other people with it, which is obviously one of those things we're doing today when we talk about grant writing. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that area if you want to just jump
Yeah,
in. So let's start with
absolutely.
we'll start with really basic stuff to begin with. So what is a grant, Cristin? What is that?
Okay, so there are a couple different kinds of grants. A grant is basically free money. Okay, it's someone, an agency, either a state, the state, a federal grant, a local grant, or a private grant. I also sort of consider contests kind of in that grant category because that's still either a prize or money or something in exchange that is coming to you. So that's how I would define it.
Okay. And so when we talk about who can get grants, is that only nonprofits that can get grants, or can for-profits get grants?
No, definitely for profits. Now, I will say it's easier sometimes for nonprofits. Nonprofits do qualify for, I would say, more grants than for profits do, but definitely does not disqualify you at all.
Okay, perfect. So somebody hears about grants, they go, "Oh, I would love to get a grant. I don't know where to start or what to do." What would you suggest the first thing they even do if they're interested in even pursuing the idea of getting a grant?
Get on some lists. Just go on Google, search grants in my area, local grants, just search for grants and get on some serve lists. Search your state. Get on your state Department of Education, your state departments. They call some states, vary state to state what they call it, but Department of Health and Human Services. They offer a lot of grants. The But that would be the first thing. Get on those lists, because once you get on lists, then those will give you notifications through your email of when grants become available. And so then you're not just constantly searching and seeking, because grants come out randomly, and so it's really hard, like, oh, I need a grant. I need a grant right now. Well, that's very unlikely that you're just going to get a grant at the exact time that you need it. So getting on those lists and getting emails coming into you and having grant alerts is a really, really good first step.
Okay. Are grants specific to, you mentioned kind of the state level, and obviously I know there's the government level. Are there city grants and then county grants and state grants? Does it kind of go like start small and go all the way up, or is it state and federal?
I would say there's no limit to a type of grant, because it's based, there could be privately funded grants.
Okay.
So yeah, there can definitely be city grants if those, are a foundational grant. Like colleges and have different, foundation grants that are to be used for a specific purpose. And, those are things to look at too.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. When you sign up for these alerts to get the notifications, what give me a couple of examples of what does one of those like alerts look like? Is it like, hey, we have $1 million you can apply for anything you're looking for? Is it like, well, you can apply for this if you're only a school and only if you need chairs and new tables or something, or a build out? Like, what do those kind of alerts look like that tell you about grants that are coming out?
grants are usually very specific and have a specific cause or purpose attached to them. And so an example would be like Arbor Day Foundation. Okay, so if they're going to sponsor a grant, and I'm using that as an example because that's one that we've received. Now this is a smaller grant. These are not going to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're still to benefit your school, and there's still money that didn't come out of your school's, funds and help benefit the education of the student population that you serve. Okay, so the Arbor Day Foundation is, all about trees and the environment. And so that's what the purpose of that grant is going to be all about. And so you want to, if that type of grant comes out, you get a notification for that, then you want to make sure that you're going to write your grant proposal around that purpose, right? So how are you going to plant trees in your school, and use that purpose, right, to further, their own purpose of that grant and their goals, right? So that's really truly the key is matching those the purpose of the grant and how that can benefit your school.
Is it specific to for like a one will come out and say, hey, no Christian organizations can apply for this, or only Christian organizations can apply for this, or is that never included in a grant?
I haven't necessarily come across that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Okay, man. And then, all right. So I get one. I'm applying for it. Somebody obviously has maybe never applied for one before. I've heard it's crazy time consuming and invasive. What does that look like? So somebody goes, I want to apply for one. Should they take some classes on YouTube? Should they do something specific, or just follow the prompts and apply? I've never done one, so I really have no idea, obviously, what that even looks like. What do you kind of suggest for somebody who gets that email and does want to apply for one they think they're qualified for?
So every grant is going to be a little bit different, but they all, I would say, generally are going to require a lot of data and some research. And so, when you're asking for free money, that's you have to put in that hard work. Okay, that's the payment. You're paying that on the front end. That's your hard work is the payment. And the difficult thing is that it's not, your time and your effort is not always guaranteed, and that's where it gets really, emotional when you get invested in these grants and grant writing, because I've been on both sides where I've been so blessed to get quite a bit of funding in grants, but I've also gotten denied some grants, and it can be very heartbreaking. But it does take some time, research and effort, and dedication to be able to sit down and commit to writing your grant.
What's the shortest amount of time you've spent on a grant, and what's the longest amount of time that you've spent on a grant?
Shortest 10 minutes.
Wow.
And those are just like fill in the blank, very easy, more like contest type things, or, just very simple. The longest is months.
Wow, wait. And months. And have you lost the ones you've worked on for months?
No, I got that one. Thank the Lord.
Right.
And that was the biggest one I've ever applied for in my whole entire career. So it was nearly $1 million grant.
Wow.
So that one definitely paid off. It was a highlight of my career for sure.
That's awesome. So, all right. So then if that's the biggest one you've gotten, what's one of the smallest ones? I mean, $500, is that, I'm assuming, maybe small, or what's the smallest look like?
Yeah, 500 less. And a lot of times, some of the things that we'll get will be in like equipment, or like, one of the grants that we got from the Obesity Coalition was some PE equipment for our school. And, it was wonderful. The kids loved it. We didn't have to come, again, out, of our school finances to purchase that. And we just paired, things that our goals that we already had within our curriculum for gross motor activities and physical activity, with the Arkansas Obesity Coalition. And they just provided, a lot of the equipment through that grant. So, it just really varies. So it doesn't always have to even be in the form of exchange of money, but, equipment and supplies. I've had, curriculum, our curriculum company that we use. We've gotten some things from them as well. So yeah.
Very cool. So time frame then, if I apply, I know this would vary on all of them as well. If I apply, how long till you usually get funding? What does that usually look like?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm kind of sitting on pins and needles. I'm waiting for a current grant that I applied for. I applied at the end of September, and I will find out December 1st if I receive that grant. It's a $200,000 grant. So really, really having good thoughts about that. So that would be really, wonderful for our school going into the new year, 2025. But again, grants will vary. They're individual. Every grant is individual. Whoever is funding that grant is going to make up the rules.
Okay. So if you get that one in December, when you say you get it, is it funded like that time or that day, or they go, hey, you got it, but you won't get it for 3 months?
Yeah, usually it's not in your bank account that same day. They'll send you an award letter, and the award letter will usually send you a funding timeline. So whether the grant will be paid like in bulk or paid in quarterly or, payments, or however it's determined by, the grant instructions.
Do you then also have to prove, I know this is very dependent on the grant you get, of course. You talked about the one where you had to plant trees. Do they require, after a certain amount of time, proof of pictures? They come by for a visit to say, did you actually use these funds? Prove that you use these funds in this way, or we're going to do what? Like, what does that kind of look like?
I've never had a grant that requires you to have proof of the use of funds, but almost all grants require participation in an audit, a possible audit.
Okay.
So, like, you could possibly be audited within a pool, at any given time, within a certain amount of years or whatever. I actually have never been audited, fingers crossed again. But that is the procedure, that it's not an automatic thing, but it's more of a random, selection process for the auditing. But it does happen, absolutely, because there has to be accountability for the funding process. So I would advise anyone that is applying for grants, or especially that has received funds, to document. Make sure that you keep all of your receipts and proof of what you have spent, because it is very important, if you are audited, that you do keep accurate records.
So what does that look? I mean, I know you've never been audited, so this hasn't happened, but maybe you do know the worst.
Yeah.
Somebody gets audited, they didn't do it, they misused the funds, or they didn't do what they said they were going to do. What happens? What's the jurisdiction, or what's the disciplinary action?
Well, the very worst thing that could happen is you would have to pay the money back.
That'd be pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, if think about $1 million, like if you had that $1 million loan, I would not want to be even having to pay that back. My goodness.
What about jail time? Anything like that? Have you ever heard of, like, I know you haven't had this, but anything bad like that you've heard from people?
I've never heard of it, but again, that doesn't mean it's not impossible.
Okay, man. Okay, so obviously, anybody who's listening, if you do grants, of course, please do it the right way. Don't take advantage of the system. As we know, people, of course, always take advantage of the good things that are out there, and they ruin it for the rest of us. So, all right. So we know the process. We sign up, we do this whole thing, we submit it. Now, I know in all this, you've probably learned some good tricks of the trade, some tips, some things. What are maybe some ones that come to mind and go, hey, I wish I had known this when I was starting to do the grant writing process? What are some of those little tips that you have in your brain?
Uh, Apply for everything.
Okay.
Once you get on those lists, because you're not going to get all of the grants that you apply for. So just statistically, just apply, right? Because once you apply for your first grant and you put all of your time and attention into your research and data and census and, because likely every grant is going to need that similar information, okay? Use that, edit it, put it in your next grant. Okay, so that's going to save you just a tiny, tiny bit of time, to just tweak it and edit it and, to use that to build on whatever the goal and the purpose of, your next grant is. So apply to everything, use those templates, adjust them, edit them, do your research. The more data is your friend. Definitely making sure you're answering all of the questions fully. I see that a lot, like, people that'll kind of consult with me about grant writing, or they get their grant in at the very, very last minute. That's kind of a common, I would say, big no too. I am get it in the same day or the same week. That's my goal.
Whoa.
So when I get on those lists and I get the emails, I am super, super fast and prompt about getting my grants applied for and submitted. Now, some of the longer grants, you can't do that, like the one that I spent 4 months on, right? That's an exception. Another tip I have is ask for the very most. That is something I learned a little bit late in my grant writing experience. When I wrote that nearly $1 million grant, I sat with my pen and my paper and I was like, do I put this number down? Like, I was scared too. But I just had to really be bold and do it, because I was like, what's the worst they're going to say? They're going to say no. But like, then I was thinking, well, how are they going to say yes to $1 million? And this was a grant that actually had to go through legislation. Like, it was a lot of people had to say yes to it, and that is really what taught me, okay, you ask for the very most, right? If I'd asked for even a dollar, a cent less, right? $100,000 less, that's what I would have gotten. That was a huge lesson for me. Huge.
Do you know what the amount that they're willing to, like, the max, or is it like, here's a grant, just apply within, or do they go no more than 1 million allowed for this grant specifically? Is there an amount on grants?
Yes and no. Sometimes that grant specifically, there was not. So I guess I'll never know if I'm sure there was a limit, but it was not disclosed to me at that time. The grant that I'm currently waiting to find out if I will receive it, the limit was 200,000, and so I asked for the limit for the very most. So when I find out if I will receive that grant in December, they can give me between $1 and 200,000. Of course, I'm hoping for the farther end of that.
Of course. So they could approve and still only give you 50,000, but still technically approve it, but say, hey, we're only going to give you 50.
They could, yes.
Okay, so it's not like a yes or no and you're done. It could be, no, we're not doing that. We're going to give this instead. That does happen.
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. I like that. It's good. I got just some fun random questions for you before we wrap it up. What's the craziest like grant you've ever seen come across where they're like the most specific, like the trees one? I like that one, but is there one like, hey, here's a grant, but you can only use it for a slide, or I don't know, something super silly? You're like, I can't believe there's even a grant out there for that. Any funny ones that you've seen since applying for grants?
I'm sure there are. I don't really know of any kind of crazy ones. The silliest one that we've done was, I mean, it's pretty silly. It was a staff costume contest. I'm not kidding. And the prize was actually really prestigious. It was like a full weekend professional development for our entire school. Now we have 85 staff members, and this was an out of state training.
Whoa.
Whoa, right? Okay. So we took it very seriously. We took this costume contest extremely seriously. Okay. We won. I wish I had the picture to show you. You'd realize why we won, but it was great. We went with an 80s baby theme. If you can just imagine what that looked like, it was great. But we had a lot of fun with that one.
That's awesome. All right, so there you go. That answered my question perfectly. There's some funny ones and silly ones out there, and you should apply for all of them, as Cristin said. So awesome. Well, hey, I always end with the same question that I ask everybody, and it'd be, hey, if you had to share one, I know this is all advice, but if you were to share one piece of advice with the school leaders that are listening, what would you say that one piece of advice would be for them? It can be grant writing or it can be non-grant writing, doesn't matter, but one piece of advice.
I would say just keep having a growth mindset. Stay positive. You know, our world can be hard and challenging, and we're raising the next generation. And what we do every day matters. And just to remember that and keep that in your heart, and your purpose is truly important.
That's perfect. Love it. Well, Cristin, thank you for taking time out of your day to hop on here, talk to our listeners about grant writing. I'm hoping we hear some cool success stories, maybe in a year or, months down the road, where some of our listeners reach out and say, hey, took Kristin's advice, applied, and I got something. Or, I feel like $500 would be a win, because it's 500 more than you had without applying at all.
Right. So, exactly.
I love that. So thank you for taking time to share and do that. I love what you're doing over there in Arkansas and with your school, and wishing you guys nothing but the best. You continue to educate the next generation that's coming behind us. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Cristin for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what she's doing. I love her background, and I love what she was able to share on grant writing today. I learned a ton because I didn't know really anything about grant writing. So I'm hoping you guys were able to learn something as well. And as always, at least take one thing from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. And hopefully that's more funds from the grant writing process. So I hope you guys are able to learn something from there. Well, here at School Success, we have 3 great free resources for you. We want to make sure you're taking advantage of. The first one is our podcast you're listening to right now. It is the School Success Podcast, and we drop weekly episodes every Monday for free. So make sure you're tuning back in for those. The second one, if you go to our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com, in the top right-hand corner, there is a button called School Success Report. Just click that to sign up to receive our School Success Report every single week, with teacher shout outs, different articles our team has written to help you be more successful. So make sure you're getting that every week. And then last but not least is of course our school success community called School Success Makers on Facebook. If you go to join that, it's completely free. I'm personally in there. Would love to see you in there as well. You can ask questions and encourage other educators that are in the group. It's a great place to start and get connected. So make sure you're over inside of there. Other than that, guys, we'll be back here next week with another amazing guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.